The Galactic Empire had long prided itself on its ability to conquer and control. For centuries, it expanded its reach, subjugating planet after planet, species after species, confident in its own superiority. The Empire's military might was unmatched, its resources vast, and its fleet seemingly invincible. As they encountered new civilizations, they applied the same brutal efficiency in their conquests: crush resistance, demand tribute, and force submission. It had worked for countless cycles. When the Empire first learned of humanity, their initial assessment was dismissive. Intelligence reports came in, detailing Earth's technological advancements, remarkable for such a young species, but ultimately insignificant in the grand scope of the galaxy. Humans had yet to show the raw military power necessary to truly compete with the likes of the Empire. They were isolated, on the fringes of galactic politics, seemingly content to remain within their own solar system. To the Empire, they were an oddity, worth noting but hardly a cause for concern. However, as the Empire's reach grew, so did its hunger for resources and new territory. Earth's location became strategically important, and its resources could fuel the Empire's expansion for generations. The decision was simple: subjugate humanity before they had a chance to become a real threat. The Empire had crushed far more advanced species without hesitation. Why would humans be any different? The attack on the human colony was seen as a routine operation, a display of force that would quickly bring humanity to its knees. A high-ranking Imperial commander, known for his cold efficiency and unwavering loyalty to the Empire, was selected to lead the mission. He viewed this task as nothing more than another step in the Empire's inevitable march across the stars. The humans, in his mind, would fold like all the others had before them. As the plans were drawn up and the fleet prepared to move, the arrogance of the Empire became ever more apparent. The discussions among the Empire's leadership were not about whether they could win, but how quickly they could force humanity's surrender. The reports they received on human defenses were met with derision. Primitive, they thought. Rudimentary at best. The idea that these so-called humans could pose a threat to the might of the Empire was laughable. The commander overseeing the operation shared this sentiment. To him, humanity was merely another species to be crushed underfoot. He did not fear their resistance, nor did he plan for any significant pushback. In his mind, humanity would be dealt with swiftly, their colonies razed, and their resources claimed. This was nothing new. It was just another routine conquest. Yet, beneath the surface, there were murmurs of unease. A few within the Empire's intelligence division had raised concerns. They had seen reports, scattered, incomplete, but troubling nonetheless, suggesting that humanity's response to threats was different. There were stories of rapid technological advancements, of their ability to adapt in ways other species could not. But these warnings were dismissed, buried beneath the weight of the Empire's unshakable confidence. The commander, fully prepared for a swift victory, did not bother to account for the possibility that things could go wrong. The Empire had faced opposition before, and each time, it had crushed its enemies. To the commander, and those around him, humanity was just another name to add to the list of conquered species. There was no need for extensive preparations, no need for caution. The humans would fall, just as all the others had. And yet, as the fleet began its journey towards the human colony, small doubts lingered in the minds of a few within the Empire. These were quickly silenced by the overwhelming narrative of imperial dominance. The fleet would arrive, humanity would be crushed, and the Empire would continue its march forward. Anything else was unthinkable. The possibility that the humans could resist, let alone strike back, was too absurd to even consider. It was this blindness, this unshakable arrogance, that would soon lead the Empire into a confrontation unlike any it had faced before. A confrontation that would not just challenge its military might but shatter the very core of its belief in its own superiority. The Empire's fleet descended upon the human colony like a storm. Thousands of warships, gleaming in the cold darkness of space, filled the skies over the unsuspecting settlement. The Empire had sent one of its largest fleets, more than enough to crush any resistance they might encounter. As the ships aligned in formation, their sheer numbers alone made it clear that this would be no ordinary battle. This was an exercise in dominance, a show of force designed to make humanity bow without question. The first strike was precise, calculated. The fleet's capital ships opened fire, unleashing powerful energy weapons on the colony's outer defenses. The initial blast tore through the colony's shields with little resistance. From the Empire's perspective, the human defenses were laughably weak. These shields were no match for the advanced firepower of the Empire, and within moments, the outer perimeter had been shattered. Imperial bombers swooped in next, targeting key infrastructure and defense points on the surface. Explosions ripped through the human colony as power stations, communication hubs, and military outposts were obliterated in quick succession. The Empire's forces moved with ruthless efficiency, systematically dismantling the colony's ability to mount any kind of counteroffensive. Every blast, every strike was met with cold indifference by the Imperial fleet. This was just another step in the conquest. As ground forces deployed, they were met with the last vestiges of human resistance. Human soldiers, armed with outdated and underpowered weaponry by the Empire's standards, stood their ground as the Empire's troops began their invasion. The humans fought valiantly, but to the Empire, it was nothing more than a delay. They had seen this before, species clinging to hope in the face of inevitable defeat. The Empire's soldiers pushed forward, their advanced armor and weapons cutting down the human defenders with ease. Despite their tenacity, the humans were rapidly overwhelmed. The Empire's forces advanced through the colony with frightening speed, crushing any resistance with precision. As the battle continued, the sense of superiority among the Imperial soldiers grew. They exchanged smug remarks, marveling at how easy it was to dismantle humanity's defenses. Their victory was assured, and they felt no need for caution. It was only a matter of time before humanity would surrender. The Imperial commander, overseeing the operation from the bridge of his command ship, watched the battle unfold with quiet satisfaction. Everything had gone according to plan. The colony's defenses had been weaker than expected, and the humans had offered no significant resistance. As reports came in from the surface, the commander grew more confident. It was clear that the humans had nothing left to fight with. They would either submit, or they would be wiped out. On the ground, human forces continued to fight back, but their efforts were in vain. Every attempt to push back the invaders was met with overwhelming force. Human tanks were destroyed by advanced Imperial artillery, and human infantry were mowed down by energy weapons they had no answer for. Still, they fought, determined to defend their home, but it was clear to the Empire that this resistance was futile. As the last pockets of human resistance were eliminated, the Imperial commander gave the order to cease fire. The colony lay in ruins, its defenses shattered, its soldiers dead or captured. The commander allowed himself a moment of pride. The operation had been swift and decisive, just as he had expected. Humanity would soon be brought to heel, and the Empire would have yet another victory to add to its long history of conquests. The Imperial soldiers on the ground began securing the colony, rounding up survivors and dismantling what remained of the human military presence. The atmosphere among the Imperial forces was one of arrogance and superiority. They had crushed the humans with ease, and now they awaited the inevitable surrender. The commander, certain of his success, ordered his fleet to prepare for the next phase, occupation. But beneath the surface, something was brewing, something the Empire hadn't anticipated. In their confidence, they failed to notice the subtle shifts in human activity. Communications between Earth and the colony had been severed, but the Empire didn't suspect what was coming. The Imperial commander, believing the battle was won, had no idea that humanity had not only survived this assault but had already set in motion a retaliation far beyond anything the Empire could imagine. As the dust settled, the commander declared victory. He believed the fight was over. He was wrong. What had begun as an easy triumph for the Empire would soon become the beginning of their greatest nightmare. At first, the Imperial fleet basked in the glow of what they believed was an easy victory. The human colony lay in ruins, its defenses obliterated, and their forces in control. The Imperial commander stood confident, satisfied that the operation had gone flawlessly. But beneath the surface of their triumph, things were beginning to unravel. The Empire's communication systems, usually flawless, began picking up strange disturbances. Surveillance networks flickered, detecting brief, unexplainable anomalies. The officers dismissed them as nothing more than technical errors or perhaps a feeble attempt by the remaining human survivors to disrupt their systems. There was no real concern. After all, the humans had been crushed. What could they possibly do now? The anomalies continued, growing more frequent. Some of the lower-ranking officers suggested tightening security or investigating further, but their superiors scoffed at the idea. The Empire was too powerful to be concerned with such trivial matters. And so, they carried on, completely unaware that the storm was about to hit. Then, without warning, everything changed. In an instant, humanity's fleet appeared, emerging from FTL travel like shadows slipping into reality. There had been no signal, no advanced detection. One moment, space was empty, and the next, it was filled with sleek, dark ships, their designs unlike anything the Empire had encountered before. These were not the bulky, slow-moving vessels the Empire was accustomed to facing. The human ships were built for speed, agility, and destruction, equipped with terrifying new technology that the Empire had never seen. Before the Empire had time to react, the first wave of human strikes hit. There was no warning, no diplomacy, no hesitation. Humanity's retaliation was swift, brutal, and devastating. Laser strikes cut through the Imperial fleet like blades through paper. Kinetic bombardments tore through the hulls of massive capital ships, ripping them apart in seconds. Advanced AI-controlled drones swarmed the Imperial ships, targeting critical systems with unnerving precision. Within moments, entire sections of the fleet were wiped out, reduced to nothing more than debris floating aimlessly in space. The Imperial commander barely had time to comprehend what was happening. His once mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being dismantled with terrifying efficiency. This wasn't a battle, it was an annihilation. The humans were not engaging in warfare as the Empire understood it. They weren't simply trying to win. They were erasing every trace of the Empire's presence, ensuring that nothing was left behind. The human ships moved with deadly purpose, their every strike calculated to destroy, not disable. Imperial ships, crippled by the first wave of attacks, were targeted again and again until nothing remained but scattered wreckage. Escape pods were destroyed before they could even launch. There would be no survivors. The humans didn't leave room for retreat or negotiation. They had been provoked, and now they were making their response clear. In the command center, panic set in. Officers scrambled to make sense of the situation, desperately trying to regroup and mount some kind of defense. But it was already too late. The Empire had never faced anything like this before. Their arrogance had blinded them to the reality of the threat they were dealing with. They had assumed humanity would fold under pressure, but instead, they had unleashed a force that would not be stopped. The Imperial commander, once so confident, was now frozen in disbelief. How could this be happening? The humans were supposed to be a minor threat, a footnote in the Empire's grand history of conquest. Yet here they were, destroying his fleet with a level of precision and brutality that the Empire had never encountered. Every tactic he attempted to deploy was countered almost instantly. Every maneuver his fleet made was anticipated and cut short by another wave of devastating strikes. It was as though the humans had planned for every possible outcome, and their plan was simple: leave no survivors. As the final remnants of the Imperial fleet were torn apart, the reality of humanity's scorched earth policy became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was total obliteration. The humans didn't fight wars of attrition. They didn't engage in drawn-out conflicts or battles of diplomacy. When pushed, they didn't merely defend themselves, they ensured their enemies could never strike again. Every ship, every piece of Imperial technology, every trace of the Empire's presence was systematically wiped out. It was as though the Empire had never been there. And in the midst of it all, the Imperial commander could only watch in horror as the Empire's arrogance was shattered. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. What had begun as a routine conquest had turned into the Empire's greatest nightmare. The humans weren't just a threat, they were a force of nature, a species that, when provoked, didn't just win battles. They ended them. In the aftermath of the counterattack, the few surviving officers and soldiers aboard the Imperial command ship were left in a state of disbelief. They had just witnessed their seemingly invincible fleet reduced to debris in a matter of minutes. What had started as a routine operation to subjugate a minor species had turned into an incomprehensible catastrophe. They attempted to send distress signals, but the communication channels were dead. Everything was jammed. There was no way to reach out for help, no way to call for reinforcements. They were completely cut off from the Empire. Panic began to set in. The soldiers, trained for precision and discipline, were now faced with a situation they had never imagined. They had no control, no escape, and worst of all, no understanding of how this could have happened. The commander, once a figure of absolute confidence, began to show cracks. He paced back and forth, barking orders that went nowhere. Every attempt to re-establish control was met with failure. The humans had thought of everything, leaving the Empire's finest officers scrambling in confusion and fear. As the realization of their helplessness set in, the commander's calm facade crumbled. He had led countless campaigns across the galaxy, defeating species far more advanced than the humans, yet now he stood powerless. Every maneuver, every strategy they had tried had been countered almost instantly. How could these humans, a species the Empire had dismissed as inconsequential, possess such overwhelming power? The commander's mind raced, searching for answers, but none came. The horror of the situation began to sink in as he understood that this was not just a failed mission. This was an extermination, carried out with precision and merciless efficiency. The whispers among the remaining crew started. Tales of humanity's brutal warfare had circulated in the Empire for years, often dismissed as exaggerated or mere myths. There were stories of entire species that had tried to stand against humanity, only to vanish without a trace. These tales had always been regarded as fearmongering, legends passed down by those too weak to understand true galactic warfare. But now, in the aftermath of humanity's counterstrike, the crew began to realize that those stories might have been real all along. The weight of this realization bore down on them like a crushing force. The humans didn't negotiate, didn't engage in battles of attrition or drawn-out diplomacy. They responded to threats with absolute finality. It was clear now that humanity fought with one goal: to annihilate their enemies completely. There was no room for surrender, no opportunity for retreat. The Empire's forces had been wiped from existence, and the survivors could do nothing but wait, knowing their fate was sealed. The commander's desperation grew. He had faced setbacks before, but there had always been a way out, a strategy, a fallback plan, a means to regroup. This time, there was nothing. Each attempt to regroup or counter was met with failure. He looked around at his officers, once disciplined and loyal, now reduced to fear-stricken shells of their former selves. Their trust in the Empire's superiority had been shattered, and with it, their sense of purpose. They had been taught that the Empire was invincible, that they were part of a force that could not be beaten. But now, all they had left was the cold realization that they were facing an enemy who had anticipated every move. As the crew silently exchanged glances, their minds drifted back to those stories of other species. They recalled the rumors of entire civilizations disappearing after trying to fight the humans. At the time, those rumors had seemed laughable. The idea that humanity, a species so new to the galactic stage, could bring about the extinction of entire races had been dismissed as absurd. But now, with the wreckage of their own fleet surrounding them, those stories no longer seemed so far-fetched. The humans weren't fighting for territory or resources. They were erasing any threat that dared to challenge them. One by one, the crew began to lose hope. The psychological toll of the situation was unbearable. The once mighty empire had been reduced to ruins in a single day, and the full extent of humanity's capabilities was now horrifyingly clear. There was no escape from this. The remaining officers knew that even if they somehow managed to survive, they would return to an empire that had been fundamentally broken. The humans had exposed the Empire's arrogance and shattered its illusion of invincibility. The breakdown in morale was palpable. Officers who had once been unwavering in their loyalty to the Empire now sat in stunned silence, unable to process what had just occurred. The weight of their helplessness pressed down on them, suffocating any thought of resistance. There would be no glorious victory here, no heroic last stand. The Empire's leadership, once so proud and arrogant, was crumbling under the realization that they had been utterly outmatched. Humanity had made one thing clear: they did not simply fight wars. They ended them, leaving nothing behind but devastation and despair. As the Imperial command ship attempted its escape, panic had already set in. The crew, once so certain of their superiority, now scrambled in desperation. But no amount of maneuvering could change the inevitable. Humanity's fleet, relentless and efficient, was closing in. They had watched the destruction of their own fleet, powerless to stop it, and now they were the final target. The command ship had been the nerve center of the operation, and it was clear that humanity intended to eliminate every last trace of the Empire's presence. In a final act of defiance, the commander ordered evasive maneuvers, but it was futile. The human ships, far more advanced and faster than anything the Empire had, were already upon them. Systematically, they dismantled the command ship's defenses. The shields were torn down within seconds, and the weapons systems were rendered useless. It was a clinical, methodical destruction, carried out with cold precision. One by one, critical systems aboard the ship failed, until nothing remained but a hollow shell, floating aimlessly in the void. There would be no survivors. The command ship was obliterated, its crew erased in a matter of moments, just like the rest of the fleet. With the destruction of the command ship, the fate of the entire operation was sealed. The Empire's grand fleet, sent to crush a minor species, now lay in ruins, scattered across space as nothing more than wreckage. The colony they had attacked was nothing but a smoldering memory, and their infrastructure, communications, supply lines, outposts, everything that had tied them to the sector was wiped out. Humanity had not just won the battle, they had erased the Empire's presence completely. There was nothing left to salvage. No one left to report back. It was as if the Empire had never been there at all. And then, just as the galaxy waited in silence, humanity sent their message. It wasn't a long, drawn-out declaration of victory. It wasn't a gloating speech or a demand for surrender. It was a simple, direct statement, broadcast across the galaxy for every species to hear. This is how humans fight. We don't seek war, but if war comes to us, we will end it, permanently. There was no mistaking the intent behind the message. Humanity wasn't interested in negotiating, in playing the political games that the Empire had thrived on. They were only interested in ensuring that their enemies could never threaten them again. The message reverberated across the galaxy, reaching every corner of known space. In an instant, the perception of humanity shifted. They were no longer the isolated species that others had dismissed or ignored. They were a force capable of total annihilation, and they had no interest in protracted wars or treaties. Their scorched earth policy wasn't just a strategy, it was a warning. Any species that dared to challenge humanity would face the same fate as the Empire. There would be no mercy, no negotiations, no survivors. The remnants of the Galactic Empire, those who had not been directly involved in the attack, were left reeling. The defeat was absolute, unlike anything they had ever experienced. Their fleet, their pride and symbol of dominance, had been reduced to nothing. Their leadership, so confident and arrogant before, now faced the cold reality of their utter powerlessness. Humanity had not only defeated them, they had shattered the Empire's very foundation. The few surviving leaders, scattered across the Empire's territories, now lived in fear. They had underestimated humanity once, and they knew that they could not afford to make that mistake again. Word of the defeat spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. Other species, some of whom had considered challenging humanity, quickly reconsidered. The Empire, once seen as the dominant force in the galaxy, had been dismantled with terrifying efficiency. Fear began to ripple through the political alliances and rivalries that had long defined galactic diplomacy. Everyone understood the message now. Humanity didn't fight like other species. They didn't engage in long, drawn-out wars. They didn't give their enemies second chances. When provoked, they annihilated. In the wake of the destruction, the galaxy was left to ponder what the future would hold. The Empire, once so feared, was now a cautionary tale, a reminder of what could happen when arrogance met overwhelming force. And at the center of it all was humanity, standing as a silent force, willing to defend themselves not with negotiation or compromise, but with total, unrelenting power. The galaxy would never be the same. From that day forward, the name of humanity would be spoken with fear and respect, a reminder that while they may not seek war, when war comes to them, they don't fight, they annihilate.